much, everyone, for being here. I went out, just made a quick trip down the walkway and didn't see anybody coming. So I know that they won't be here in 30 seconds or less, so we'll get started. Thank y'all for being on time. Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. And you'll find out today that as the facility committee, this is our last meeting.
Yay!
Hopefully some of you will morph into the next phase, which will follow the board recommendation that happens next week. So let me just give you a brief history of what's going to happen from today until next Wednesday. We'll finish the meeting today, hopefully a little bit early, number one. Number two, we should have a really good game plan for what we're going to do next week, either on Monday or Tuesday, depending upon those of you here in the audience who choose to be a part of the next phase of this committee, which is to make a presentation and a recommendation to the board at 6 o'clock next Wednesday, the 22nd. Following that, based upon what the board does, it is, I would say, fairly likely, since they've already had me set up a meeting for February 5th, to potentially call for a bond election. If we call for a bond election, then we are going to be moving into a bond committee or a PAC, depending on what you want to call it, a political action committee. Because at that point, everything that I've done up until now ceases. I cannot speak for or against. That has to fall on you. Now, that doesn't mean I won't be there at the meetings to answer questions, etc. But I think from this point forward, everything that comes forward out of this group is going to be communication, strategy, how to let everyone know in the community what's going on, etc. So with that in mind, let me tell you what I think, and I've been wrong before, but what I think is that this committee has come forward with the idea to replace new construction at the high school, and you can see the poster behind me, a new administration building, a new cafeteria, a counseling suite, a library, academic classrooms that include special education, culinary classrooms that would be a part of the new construction, a dance studio, a band hall, and a choir room. A good percentage of that academic wing would be a two-story building to match the A building and the science building. The majority of the other parts of the things that I mentioned would probably just be tall ceilings, kind of like this facility right here. But the only two-story construction would be the academic building. We would renovate in the A building, which I think last time you heard Nico say that the A building was, the CTE fit like a glove into that building, because by demolishing some walls, we would be able to produce classroom sizes of about 1,500 square feet that meet what is normally considered to be the classroom size for many of those, like floral design or whatever. Health science, technology, cosmetology, they all need bigger classrooms. So the renovated building would include health science, ag science, our education program, art, cosmetology, audio, video, some electives. We do have some electives that are CTE, and some flex and support classrooms. Inside the CTE building, we would renovate, would be the automotive section, the ag structures and mechanical, and the construction systems. So that would all be renovated. Demo would be the administration building, the cafeteria, I guess I'll get out of the way, the administration building, the cafeteria, the counseling suite, the C building, the H building, the portables, the east side of the ABS building, the construction systems, and the band hall.
Like you're demoing band hall and construction?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why they're different color. These are, because it just doesn't make sense that we're trying to keep everything contiguous inside one building for safety factors. Some recent adjustments that came forward either from this committee or from the board directed to me. One, the new cafeteria would be able to serve 500 students rather than 300 students. Okay? That way, if the high school ever decided to go to 2 lunches, they could fit half the school into one lunch and the other half of school into the other lunch, leaving it open for open campuses or senior off or whatever, or simply just closing it down. Doesn't put that responsibility on us, but we chose to make the cafeteria 500 square feet. We would potentially renovate the gymnasium foyer and its restrooms and the locker rooms for handicap accessibility. And we potentially could renovate the gymnasium classroom into a locker room for the Derby dolls so they could actually stay inside the contiguous building and not have to go outside to this existing gym. So this gym would become more of a secondary type auxiliary gym, and then provide better traffic flow, parking, and potentially doing something with what I call Riceburg Way, which is right now in disrepair. So that would be the high school. Hutchins Elementary would be new construction, building 2 additional grade levels. What grade levels they are is not this committee's charge, that would be the board's charge. We just are saying that we would build a 2 grade level construction at Hutchins, adding a gymnasium so that it stayed within a contiguous building, and then improve traffic flow and parking. Northside and Myatt, based upon the fact that all those things I just mentioned to you and making sure that we have enough contingency, is going to eat up the majority of the, I got a final number. Lewis Wilkes will be here for the board meeting on February 5th, but I've got a final number based upon the Wharton County Appraisal District and the present values. Our tax rate, which is identical to what it is right now, would raise $80,905,000. So now we're closer to that 81 million that we talked about from the very start. These 2 construction, the high school has, with those things we've added, the cost has gone up some. Now remember, these are all preliminary numbers. I want you to remember that. When we go out for bid, we could get totally different numbers. This is just what we think right now, and I can tell you we reached out, actually we didn't, they reached out to 4 local builders, area builders, to come up with the numbers they had to use for the construction that we have presented to you. But based upon that, we have inadequate funding to complete any renovations at Northside and Myatt. Remember, Myatt is structurally sound, functionally not sound. Northside is both structurally and functionally sound. So that would allow us to present to the board what we're going to do for our present plans and allow them the flexibility down the road to look at long-range facility planning whenever we have to address Myatt and Northside, which I can tell you, sometime down the road, we're going to have to do that. And then that thought of consolidating a potential elementary grade levels into 3 grade level campuses to meet that need of being 900 or lower, and potentially having to have an early childhood center kind of separate. Those will have to be put on hold for right now because we don't have the money. All based upon the $81 million. That's a summary. Yes, ma'am.
You said the costs increase some for the high school. Like if the costs continue to increase and things just seem to be going up rapidly, who makes the decision on what priorities change? Is that follow the board?
Let me step in. I'm going to step on
Yep.
your toes here. the construction costs and the estimating didn't necessarily go up. During conversations, additional scope was identified at the high school.
So it's not the
Things like
cost, it's the scope.
the additional classrooms at the CTE or the shops and the locker rooms for that, some of the gym scope.
The whole renovation of the A building wasn't in there originally.
That's not.
Not originally.
Remember, so let me go back and tell you about how the cost,
So it wasn't
Increase.
construction costs. We do have a percentage of inflation toward the midpoint of construction in our numbers. So it wasn't just construction costs have risen.
so let me go back and tell you what, and I probably went over too fast. The recent adjustments that took us from the 52 million to probably closer to 56. Increase in the cafeteria size from 300 to 500. That increased the cost in the cafeteria by 40%.
And that was a board.
That was a board decision, and hopefully, we did that trying to stay minimal cost, but the thought was, why are we going to build a cafeteria that didn't meet the needs of what you guys gave us, which was, make sure you meet the needs of the future. So we increased the size of the cafeteria.
Or
So-
go back and do core facilities, maybe.
The renovation of the foyer and the restrooms and the locker rooms were to meet the handicap accessibility issues. We didn't necessarily have a locker room for the Derby House. But if we're gonna build a dance studio, it makes sense to have the dance studio close to their locker room. We don't wanna build a new locker room, so that was something we just added to the scope. There's a classroom back there that's plenty big. It's not being used, it's empty, and it would fit right next to the dance studio. That way the dance studio could actually be joined to the gymnasium, and everybody could stay within that internal structure and wouldn't have to go outside to get to any of their classes. And then the other thing we added was traffic flow, parking, and a renovation to Riceburg Way. So those were the things that increased the scope of the $52 million to what you'll see Nico present to you later. So it isn't the construction costs, it's those things. Questions? Okay. I'm done. I'm going to see y'all.
So are we.
We've already switched the computer out since you started talking, so it's pretty good. So we got our technical difficulties worked out, I think, so thank you all again for having us tonight and all the time that you guys have put in over the last several months. It makes a big difference for us, and I think it's going to really make a big difference when the board gets your recommendations next week. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Nico, and we'll talk a little bit more about what's next.
All right, so tonight we're gonna start with the housekeeping stuff, review where we've been, where we're going, and the committee charge. And then Alan's gonna guide us through a SWOT exercise, which sounds riveting, I know. So hopefully it'll get you guys a little bit more involved and engaged with the process. It's gonna be interactive, so have your mobile devices ready. If you don't have one,
You can use mine.
you can use mine.
I don't know, my stuff's working.
And then we're going to talk a little bit about on-campaign strategies. Is this open?
No, I'll work it
And then obviously Q&A, so going through the committee charge, I'm not going to read this all, but you're here to represent the school district and the community. Assess and prioritize, collaborate amongst each other with us, and eventually end up with a long-term facility master plan and make a recommendation to the board.
Yeah, the
So-
first one and the last one, this is what we're about today. So, I mean, once we go past the board calling the election, we're gonna need y'all's help to carry the message to the community, to your neighbors. And so that's, y'all been involved in developing the plan, which I think makes it really strong. And when we get to the SWOT a little bit later, we had a hard time finding weaknesses because you guys have worked us through some of those. So I appreciate that, so.
So tonight is about endorsing the plan, and Mr. Callahan did a great job kind of summarizing the scope of work. So we're not going to get too in the weeds on that. I think everybody knows what we're talking about, what we've been talking about, what's included in the bond. So we're just going to summarize it and show you the numbers. And again, we're going to talk about some bond election strategies and doing a SWOT exercise. As Mr. Callahan also mentioned, at the end of this meeting too, we'd like to form a small group or a large group. It could be everybody, I guess. If you all want to go to the board meeting and show support for this process and have the recommendation taken to the committee to call, or to the board, to call the bond, but we'll need to elect a spokesperson or spokespersons. But we'll get into that a little bit later. But so on the tail end of this meeting and ahead of that board meeting on the 22nd, we'll need to have one more meeting with that small group who's going to be the spokesperson. And that'll be either January 20th or 21st, depending on scheduling. The 20th is a district holiday. So
Martin Luther King Day.
My kids are out of school, so it may be a little problem for me. I'll see if my mom can watch them. Anyway, we'll make it work. But we'll meet and do kind of a workshop with that group who's going to actually take the recommendations to the board. We've prepared a presentation that will also incorporate some of the items that we're going to discuss tonight into that, particularly the SWOT exercise, so we can go to the board and say, you know, here's the recommendation, here's all the meetings that we had, this is what we discussed, this is where we landed, this is our recommendation, and this is why. These are our strengths, these are our challenges. And so we'll do that together before, we're not just going to say goodbye and leave you all to the board to fend for yourselves.
Now,
But the board
I'm going
meeting,
to step on his toes for just a second. Just because you are part of the presentation and you maybe don't want to be at the part of the presentation, but you want to support the committee, you can still be there on the 22nd. So what he's looking for on the 20th or the 21st are people who are willing to step up and speak to the board about all this planning process that's going on. That doesn't, if you can't make it on the 20th or the 21st, and you still want to be at the board meeting, please be there.
I'll be at the board meeting, but I'll be in the back. I won't be saying anything. This is y'all's recommendation to the board, not ours. Well, I mean, we obviously help, but it's coming from you guys. And then at February 5th, there's a special call board meeting to actually call the bond election. So, in a nutshell, said Mr. Callahan did a great job summarizing everything. And this is the final recommendation. It'll essentially be one proposition made up of two projects, one for the high school, one for Hutchins. And it's going to be all of those things that Mr. Callahan talked about. The final number at the high school is the just under 56 million, and Hutchins is just under 23 million. So you'll notice there's a little bit of scoping contingency in there. That's, again, if things continue to evolve during the planning process after the bond is called. Oh man, we forgot about this other thing, we need to make a priority, or in the instance of construction costs rising at a rate that we didn't anticipate within our budget numbers, that's what that contingency is for. This 47 million that you see down here would be the replacement of Hutchins, or I'm sorry, of Myatt and Northside in the future. And this was projected at a 2030 construction escalated at 4% year over year. So obviously the longer that project waits, the more expensive it's going to be. But this is just something, you know, we talked about. One of the priorities of this committee was to do some consolidation and replacement on Myatt and Northside. Unfortunately, the way things shaked out, it's just not on the docket for this bond election. So we wanted to mention that to the board that, hey, part of our thought process throughout this entire committee's work is that we're laying the foundation for future improvements to come.
What's that number today?
36-ish. It's
Substantial.
hopefully I mean, the economy may be getting back on track. Things seem to be trending in the right direction, but you never know. They're talking about another pandemic coming, so who knows? You know, construction costs may go up 14% year over year.
Yeah, I think the important thing is the work that the committee has done here. That will all be summarized for the board. We've actually got a big packet of information for them to accompany all of your work. And so that's a not yet, but it's something that you will, the next committee that works with the board for the future bond will have all the work that you guys have done.
And in your $47 million budget for the high school, you have a contingency in that $47 million. I'm talking about-
Well, there is a contingency within that number. There's a construction contingency that we use for owner's contingency and contractor's contingency.
Right.
And then we have like a general scoping contingency for that entire campus project.
Right, so you got the $3 million scoping contingency, and in your other numbers, you have a construction contingency.
Correct.
in
Yes.
that. Okay.
And so we can provide a granular breakdown, and we will for the board recommendation, but, you know, all the soft costs, construction costs, soft costs, AE fees, material testing, survey, geotech, anything and everything you can think of is included, and the furniture is included with that 46.7.
Demo. And
Yeah.
this philosophy.
Demo also.
Yeah, demo also. This philosophy served us well, like at Palacios, we had an overall contingency number, and that's very typical for school moms to do that. Because you don't know everything, even as much planning as we've done, there'll be something, it's good to have that built in for when you go.
And so, just for the math people out there, the contingencies were identified based on a percentage of the whole. So there was a leftover amount. We just said, okay, roughly 60% of the budget is this. So on and so forth. Any more questions about this?
Just general, is there a world, just playing devil's advocate, where we bring this to the board and they say, we don't want to take the risk of where construction costs are going to be, we just want to, because we're just a recommending committee.
Right.
Is that, and I know the board members in here, is that there's no possibility that there will be something changed, I guess, on their end, their feelings have been heard.
In my dealings with the board up to this point, I've kept them very much abreast. So I present them, if you go to our website, and Valerie's got a little link on there where you can see what I actually present to the board, plus the PowerPoint presentation. It is in there, and I have not had them add anything other than the things that I mentioned today, of why the cost went from 52 to 56. So the things they said, got to make sure you have a cafeteria that if potentially we ever wanted to close campus, we could do that. So those things are added into that 56 million.
You guys don't get that, it should smooth the process.
I think that you've got 3 board members in here right now, and they're not, they're not going to speak because they are going to be speaking as an individual tonight and not as a board. But I think if there was consternation on their part, I think we would be hearing from those 3.
The board are elected officials. They're elected to represent their constituents, and you are their constituents. So if y'all take a recommendation to them and say, we feel like this is the best path moving forward for El Campo ISD, here's the documentation of all the work that we've done as a committee, all the times we met, every sign-in sheet, every person who was on that committee. We've done our homework, and we feel like this is a great plan of action for us to improve our district. Most districts would be hard pressed to ignore that or say, you don't know what you're talking about. And you all have a good board. I've worked with some committees that that's not been the case. So, phones out.
Yeah, I know.
Put your phones
Well,
away.
and being in the presence of some educators, when we get to a SWOT analysis, like, I know you all do that all the time.
I don't know, does everyone know that?
We're gonna get into that. But this first one.
Oh, I'm
is,
sorry, I jumped the gun.
Do you agree with the recommendation that will be presented to the board, which was the previous slide essentially? The high school.
I vote yes because I don't have my phone.
You want to use mine?
So, Alicia,
Yeah, we're hoping this is unanimous.
I want to change it all up. I want to come back for some more meetings.
You do that just for fun. You can stay.
Hey, I know y'all want to do it for fun. Yeah. She didn't.
You can.
No, that's okay.
Next one.
I'm not very, I don't think you'd make much of a difference. Nah, I don't know.
Has everybody had a chance to vote? Who wants to vote? Good.
33, that's great, fantastic. All right, this is good.
That's the goal.
All right.
Are there some people who, and you don't have to just verbalize, are there some people who just didn't vote, they just chose not to vote, that are, I just want to make sure you're not oppositional? Nobody, okay.
All right, so I jumped the gun a little bit earlier, but I know as educators, some of y'all in here are educators, do a SWOT analysis, and that stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. So typically what we do with citizens committees is once we come up with the proposal and the recommendation we want to take to the board, we want to get, you guys have the most information about what's in the project. We want to get some information from you guys, some detailed information. So in the time that we have, we found it's easy, like what we've been doing here, to get some feedback from you. It's anonymous, but we'll have all of your data and responses that we can, that'll help form that recommendation next week, but also help form our communication strategy as we take it out to the community, and as you all take it out to the community. So the first thing, everybody's kind of clear on that. There's a little graphic here, bless you. Now, this is just a standard graphic, but we're going to go through each one of these, and we're going to ask for you guys to submit some responses. So for example, on the strengths, we're going to ask you for 5, or you'll have as many as 5 that you want to put in. It's going to build in a ton of text on the slides. Don't be alarmed by that. We want to know what are the advantages, or what, if I'm going to go through my elevator speech, if I run into somebody at the grocery store, what are the top 3 or 4 things that I'm going to say? What's my message of why we need this and what makes the bond package good for kids, good for students, good for teachers? So then we'll go through, and hopefully, we may have some things that, man, I wish we could have done this. We need to be prepared for this if someone asks the question. So we may term that as a weakness or a threat. I think you guys have come up with a really strong package. And then opportunities. What are some messages that we need to get out? Who is it that we need to get that message out to that we want to talk to? We're going to start with strengths. So any questions on strengths before we start? It'll be pretty straightforward here, I think. All right, so the first one's just kind of a fluency exercise with all of this. It should be the same QR code or same link. Okay? See if your slide comes up. So you're limited to 25 characters. So it's going to start building an enormous word cloud. Don't get worried about the traffic on the screen. This is this is just to collect data. Yeah, you can type in a phrase, you can type in 1 word, 2 words, or a phrase. This is going to collect data from you all. We're going to mine that and look for commonalities when we go to the board. So y'all won't have to do that part of it. We just want what you feel is the strength of this proposal that we have.
Is it working for you all?
We have one that got out.
It's not working.
No, we're wordy people. 25 characters is not
It's
very.
difficult, right? Yeah. Well, we got plenty of time. There we go. All right.
You can log up to 5 strings on this one, but 25 characters per string.
I like that. Replaces ancient construction. Okay. Preparing for growth. That's good.
Good for you.
And so a word cloud is It generally works like if you have multiple responses that are the same, the words get larger and larger and larger, and then you have some front runners that are identified. We realize that this is kind of a challenge because this software is not intuitive enough to kind of reconcile similar responses and combine them. So we're gonna have to do that in post, but this is a way for us to document everybody's responses and have that documented in history, so. I see some commonalities.
Yeah, I see Scholastic Meet, more effective work area. That one I hadn't thought of.
Like safety and security and modernization are getting a little bit bigger.
Preparing for growth. Like that. Is it working for everybody? Anybody having trouble with the app?
I accidentally
That's
got
all
out.
it gave.
Oh, okay. Do you need
Yeah,
this?
hers was the same way.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah. So you-
Oh,
one slide further. So then we repopulated our districts on the next one. Just as an exercise for us.
Go to the website.
Oh,
We'll ask you guys to pick the
you're
top.
good.
I like that one.
Detention strength.
Whatever you think. Bill.
Salt traffic flow, I like that.
Turn to the iPad.
Take
So
another.
just so everybody's aware, you'll start just kind of finalizing your input. There are several up there. Modernization, safety, and security also would be bigger because that's listed in there several times. Taxes is mentioned in there several times.
Yeah, funds available. That's a good one. So the amount sounds like it's reasonable.
And like no athletic facilities is a strength. So that's kind of unique.
We will take these strengths from you and we will kind of compile them together in kind of like a case study process where we look and find similarities and then combine them into a term that we will present to that committee on Monday or Tuesday of next week. That could be multiple words. Anybody need us to read any of those? I know some of them are pretty small, but you should be able to see them for the most part.
I like the prepare for growth one too, because that's really what you're setting up. And someone said cohesiveness of campus. I think that's a strong, and when we talk about safety and security, it kind of goes hand in hand.
So you want to work on to weaknesses?
We're gonna go on, there's one quick thing, we gave you ours, and then we'll get on to weaknesses. So I got one more for you on strengths. Let's see if this may be kind of new. Have to do it on each time. So the next one is, just right, we gave you 8 strengths, we want to know what the top 4 are. So hopefully these kind of match. We don't have to spend a lot of time on this because, the first 5 actually work really, really well. Stop working. Okay, let's do weaknesses. Okay, that's good.
Oh, we only get 3.
Yeah.
We only get 3 of these?
Hoping there's not so many.
Now I can take devil's advocate and be prepared.
Whatever got the strength.
Yeah.
I went to
Wait,
it.
no, wait, hold on. Wait, you can't decide.
It did go to for
Now
now.
it says, do I agree with the final recommendation again? So
Okay.
you went back and we agree. Okay.
There you go.
I think I'm
Your
too
top four
impatient.
strengths. Whoops, there goes
Working on
that.
Alan's.
Now I'm on opportunity. Oh, it just went all over the place. We're on opportunity now.
You get it?
I'm on
It's running okay. You want me to switch
Yeah,
it?
play it in. We're gonna switch computers. We had a little,
Oh.
do you guys ever have automatic updates that work that come on at weird times? That's what happened in Eco's computer, so we're gonna use it over there. Sorry about that.
Are we gonna need to re-sign in?
No, I think we're good. I see the word cloud still on there from before. Got that. There we go. All right, it looks like, yes, okay, good. Let's go on to weaknesses. Take a couple of minutes here. All right, there we go.
Now there's opportunities. I'm gonna go back.
I keep trying to, let's get ahead of
I completely.
I had it in the morning.
Yeah, it's because of the going back to work. Is anyone still on weaknesses or did it take you to
Yes, so
opportunities?
we finally got,
All right, now we're
I
back. All right, good.
Weaknesses.
Thank you, Nico.
Just let it move.
Here we go. You running off mine?
I was, I switched over to mine.
That gives everybody plenty of time.
Okay. I won't touch it.
Okay, yeah. So concerned about the green space, we need to incorporate some softscape into the plan for the high school, it sounds like.
No, I think people are gonna complain because they're taking out trees. Heaven forbid we cut down an old dead tree.
Right. Okay.
If it's dead, that's one thing. We try to avoid cutting down.
Well, these out here, they're not dead, but they're not growing anymore. They're maxed out.
So you always say student safety during construction is just making sure we have a clear plan communicated to the spacing and moving the students back and forth.
I think that's-
Yeah. Yeah, not all campuses, so hopefully, part of doing the master plan is that people can see that there's a plan for the next phase and the next step. All right, how many people are still going? We're good? Want a little bit more? Varying age buildings, yeah, so we just gotta.
Everybody have a chance to look at those?
All right, so I see there's public ignorance or public basically communicating things. So this is that an opportunity, which is what we're about to move on to, so. A little bit of both. Are we good to move to opportunities now? Thank you, this is very helpful. This is why we do it, some of these things we didn't think about, we tried to brainstorm. Okay. Okay. Are you guys seeing opportunities?
Threats.
There is threats.
I like threats.
I went back to,
Yeah.
Okay.
can you go back to?
Okay, so these are impacts that we can make in getting the message out, for example. That might be an opportunity. A group we might work with to get that message out. Lions Club, Rotary, things like that, perhaps you may want to mention.
Well, we're on
We're on
threats.
opportunities.
So I'm entering threats until we get opportunities.
Okay,
We can go back.
opportunities and then skip back to threats.
So is everybody on threats? Okay, we'll do the threats first.
We didn't have any problems with this software until today.
Well, that's always the way it works.
Yeah.
It's been smooth
Get
sailing.
observed, everything's gonna go.
Now that says pick your software strengths.
What the hell is going on?
Yeah, there you go, skipping it.
No, that's, I think I'm missing on.
It didn't, for me, it took me to the right side when I did it, but not on this one.
strengths.
No. It didn't do it. Just went to, what was it, weaknesses? Yeah.
Well, just wait till we get, just wait till we get more AI, how much more fun this is gonna be.
Well, if some of you are on opportunities and some of you are on threats, and the time we have, maybe it's good we work two-pronged attack.
Mine is pick forth
Mine
strengths.
went to threats, and then it clicked, you've already responded to this question, before I.
Oh.
Got to
Like,
so,
do we answer what we got it on?
Yeah, let's just answer wherever you are, because I think there'll be enough people who answer on opportunities and not on threats, that we can get a good.
So if I'm on opportunities to answer,
This is why we need to build that, so we can think about this, and that's what we get more.
It'd be a small turnout, we won't get that many votes. That's just human nature, you know, so the people that vote are the ones that, you know. District 4 garners about, not District 4, District 1 garners about 25 votes. District 2 garners about 25 votes. Yeah, maybe 100, maybe 100.
Let's do this, does anybody have an opportunity to share?
Well, the way they have.
We'll go here.
High school faculty questions, answers.
High school what?
High school faculty.
High school faculty, right. So one piece of the communication strategy is going to be definitely getting communication out once the board calls for the bond to make sure everybody, staff, knows what's in the bond and that they're the first to know, basically, right? Anybody else for an opportunity that you
I
see?
said it, it's a small town.
Yeah. So building a sense of community in a small town?
Or just being able to get the message out.
Easier and faster, yeah.
Yeah, easier, faster. We have is there anybody else wants to share one?
So for our schools that have pickup lines, they start getting in line, like at 1:45. An idea was shared about like the little garden signs with a QR code
Yeah.
where they could scan something as they're driving by or pulling up to wait. Entertainment for your hour-and-a-half wait until your children are dismissed.
That's right, yeah, I was by, especially over at Maya today, it was a
Yeah.
long line this afternoon, so, good. Anybody else opportunity, and then we'll do one trip. Go ahead.
Opportunity, I think like any visuals.
As far as we're concerned, kind of following Bob says, how they can't be in front of the school.
Yes,
Because
something,
imaginations are not always
If the pack on
magic cheaper.
social media.
Social media, yeah. But then there's also a lot of people not on there, so getting it out
yeah.
everywhere,
So what we're hearing is use some combination of digital and social media with the traditional print, including things in the newspaper, but just having posters. A lot of times, and Nico's got we have another slide in the presentation that shows some of the different things that we do, certainly Facebook, and getting information circulated that way. We've had people create a meme and basically the bond logo and that they replace their, yeah, so there's lots of ways you can do that.
Make sure we have the opportunity to turn off the comments.
Correct. Yes, and so as we move into that phase, we'll definitely need, typically there's somebody who help, there's different committees or subcommittees that work in terms of citizens committee. Some maybe have an affinity for doing Facebook or keeping up with some of the digital side. A lot of times it's just getting information to people. For example, the ballot's going to say it's a tax increase. So it's a no tax rate increase, and we need to make sure people understand that. So that's one of the things that the social media side can spread the word about quickly, is making sure there's not misinformation. I think the top threat would be misinformation. People don't know that it's a no tax rate increase. So things like that. you were talking about, or we were talking about the different types of committees. So there may be somebody who wants to talk to senior citizens or somebody who's part of Rotary who wants to take the message there. So those are all opportunities. And so as we move into the phase after the board calls the election, developing what we would call more collaborative, I think what you were talking about in terms of rendering, something that's a little more, has a little more definition to it. And also something, we use the 3D visuals, especially on an addition renovation like the high school, showing what's going to be touched and what's not, because we don't want to create misinformation when a simple graphic can show where the work is going to happen and where it's not. So we'll utilize multiple avenues, so you can see some of the different ways we've done that before. So.
Yeah, and so if y'all were so inclined, the QR code to the right is a rather large font that we did recently for Monahan's. I know that's not necessarily your one. That was some of the graphics, but there's a link to a video. We can do things like that, fly-throughs and
video shorts and things like that. Since we've got this up, let's move towards any questions on that. I think there's more to come on that. I wanted to talk about the next step, which is what Bob talked about, and if anybody is willing, where I left my PowerPoint, I wanted to just ask,
Is this something? Oh,
yeah, that's the microphone. I wanted to,
that may not be working anymore, I touched it.
what we'd like to do, I think we have a good direction now, and thank you so much for your feedback. I mean, there were tons of ideas up there that we certainly hadn't thought of, and you know the community much better than we do. Next week, on the 22nd, we would like to have some folks that would be willing to go and speak. Typically, when you speak to the board, we'd like to have someone talk about the process, just the kind of meetings we've had, and then talk about the scope and why we feel like we need to have, why a bond now? That's the question I think the board needs to hear from you. Why does this need to happen now? Why these projects? As Nico said, we prepared we've got a draft PowerPoint together that I think summarizes a lot of the information. We've got your feedback tonight. I guess we're down to seeing if there's some folks who are willing to go to the board meeting next week. And we certainly can get on and have a meeting early in the week to show you some of the materials that are put together.
So do we have anybody who would like to volunteer as a spokesperson? James? Jim? Jana?
I'm willing, but I'm not here on the 20th, so.
That's fine. The 22nd?
Yeah, I'm here on the 22nd, everything first, but I'm not here.
So we got Jim, Jana, James, and Mindy.
Right. That's great.
That's four. We will use those four as the main thrust of going to the board on the 22nd. Is there anybody who feels they can be there in support on the 22nd? So.
What time is the meeting?
6 o'clock.
Parent baseball meeting.
Monday. So I have about 8 or so of you that have said you could be there on the 22nd. So please know right now that you're invited to the meeting on the 22nd. We will more likely than not have a few recognitions that will happen. That this is Board Appreciation Month, so that'll be one of the things that happens. And then the middle school has a recognition. We'll go through the consent agenda, and then we will probably move this item up towards the front so that people don't have to sit and go through all the rest of the stuff that will be happening at that meeting. So.
What time you say it starts, 6?
Starts at 6, yes ma'am. So we have 4 spokespeople. And then we have about 8 people who say they're going to be at the meeting on the 22nd, in addition to those 4. So those 4, if you would just stay for just a minute, as soon as Nico and Alan are through with you, we'll just kind of give you a brief glimpse of the PowerPoint. We still got to add what you did tonight. Anybody else have any questions?
I think the last thing I've had, if you're interested in serving on a committee to help get the word out about the bond after the board calls it, I'm going to leave this list down here on the corner. If you would just put a check by your name, that would be awesome. We appreciate y'all very much.
Thank you. We
Appreciate y'all.
Yeah.
Good work.
Really great job.
Thanks, Grandma.
It's been very informative, and very thorough.
We've got a little bit more work to do once get things ready for the board and getting these information materials put together, which you'll be seeing more, and we'd love to be working with y'all some more in this next phase.
And what I'll tell you is you don't have to necessarily go down to that.
Oh, yep.
You can either sign here or you can just send me an email.
You want me to do another sign-in sheet?
No, I think.
I'll try not to leave them in the office like we did today.
But you can always just send me an email telling me that you'd like to partake in the next set of phases. I will tell you that there are some things that are going to be critical. Some people are going to have to be available to participate in people visiting our campuses and doing some tours. That'll be one of the things we do. Some people will have to be a part of potential fundraising. So that is something that the Political Action Committee would have to do, is fundraising. Then there would be going to places for meetings, to churches, to civic groups, etc. That would be another thing. One would be to make sure that we get all print information out. I will tell you this, I am going to recommend to our 7-member board that we provide someone who does this for a living to help our committee know how to get this type of word out. So I don't want you to think that if you volunteer for this, that that's going to be laid on your shoulders. It's going to be laid on your shoulders to do the legwork, kind of like the lady I saw this morning on the early morning news when she was saying, I don't have the money to help with the wildfires in LA, but I can certainly hand out water and do the legwork. So we will have somebody, hopefully, if the board approves it, that will kind of guide the committees. So if you just, those are, any other committees you can think of that, those are the most common.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The only thing I think is probably not in the room is who runs all the social media accounts. With their circle.
Would those committee, the outside firm that you hire to kind of meet, are they also, they advise on, hey, you need to be doing this social
Yes.
media?
Typically, what they would do is they provide a schedule of like a social media attack plan. And it's, every Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to publish a new infographic on all of our social media accounts. And, we're going to have community open houses the first and third Wednesday of every month, or whatever action that committee decides.
One thing to the committee, I've already had probably two or three people come to me just with total disinformation, like totally off track about what the committee is trying to do and all. I think that's the most powerful thing that everybody sitting in the room is when you hear stuff that's not accurate, you have the chance to tell them, no, that's not what it's going to do to taxes. No, they're not building a new stadium. No, they're not, all of those things are being said. And I think we have an opportunity to really get the word out, but don't hesitate to spread the good word of what's actually happening. Because we built a pretty palatable bond offering and hopefully we'll be seeing that.
Well, I think James has hit the nail on the head. I will try to summarize the things that we talked about tonight, what the scope of the work is, and send it out to you, what the strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are, and send it out to you. But I also need to tell you that disinformation is probably our biggest hurdle at this point. For example, I just need y'all to know that the board approved turf to go on the football field. I'm just telling you. But what no one knows And I have Jeff Balser in the room. Jeff, I've been here, this is my 5th year. How many years have you and I discussed the safety factor at the high school football field?
Probably every year.
Every year. I'm just telling you, whatever occurred, the safety of that field puts kids at risk and at jeopardy. So the choice is either A, eliminate football, derby dolls, cheerleaders, and band, soccer, and we don't have a field, or we take care of it for the best interest of the kids. So why did the field cost more? Well, because we put a pad down underneath it. It wasn't put in the last bid, so the field was laying right on top of rock. Not safe. The GMAX rating that they give for the field does not meet safety requirements. We got it to meet safety requirements every year I've been here. We added pellets and a whole bunch of things. We can no longer do that because we've added so many pellets, there isn't enough field left for it to be safe any longer. And there's Frances saying, right, she's like knowing about football fields, and you've got to have so much differential between the pellets and the top of the grass, the top of the turf. Well, folks, no one knows that. You're going to have to address those things when they come. And I
That's
just,
not part of the bond, right?
that's not part of the bond.
No,
Make that
the optics of it is people are gonna be like, well, we're spending money on that, now you want us to do a bond, and it's gonna be an issue.
There's no, I mean,
That's what I was gonna say too.
All I want to tell you is that there are factors that go on that you just have to combat with facts. Did we put down new turf? Yes.
Where'd that money come from?
Where that money come from? It came from the board putting aside fund balance money every year since they first put it in.
It shouldn't matter where it came from. It's
No,
there.
I'm just saying.
it's not part of it.
And it's not part of the bond.
And part of that too, like the misinformation when people say, oh, we're doing a new stadium, or we're doing a new whatever. You know, those things have to be propped separately on a bond election. So you couldn't do a new stadium and hide it in here.
Right.
You can't do any of that. It has to be separate, so.
And what you've done to the field is a planned expense and maintenance. And that's what it is.
Hey, Bob?
Yes.
Are we still putting 50,000 a year aside for the new field?
We haven't made that new proposal, but I can just tell you right now, 50,000 a year probably won't, it will cover us now because we put the pad down, but it didn't cover us up to this point, which is where everybody comes from. So yes, I would assume that the board will vote to continue to put fund balance aside for that. But the other thing is,
This group.
it's not part of this group. Yep.
So it's gonna affect what we're doing.
Correct. But anyway, I brought that up just so that everybody knows that there are facts out there that this group has to get out.
It's not in here.
So if those 4 people would stay, and I want to just personally tell all of you, thank you very much for all your participation in this process and for being such great people and being consistent in showing up and being a part of the solution.